kamikaze warriors of World War II, or even now modern day. But someone sacrificed themselves. If I have the will to live, then I'll push myself through. If I don't make it, then so be it. But why should my family be the final decision?
Now, part of the argument in favor of that is because we live in community. I know people who died of cancer and never told their spouse what was going on until it was unavoidable. And a lot of people think that's unfair because you're in a partnership there.
So there's a documentary on Netflix. It's called The Right to Die in Oregon. The state of Oregon has voluntary active euthanasia.
No.
And
physician-assisted suicide.
Physician-assisted suicide,
Okay.
sorry.
That's cool.
Thank you. And the entire idea...
I was finally right.
and the entire idea is that a licensed mental health counselor always talks to the patient
Absolutely.
first.
Absolutely.
But, and then in this argument, the family members or anybody who affected is involved in that. But with that being said, it's always a counseling session with the patient first. What are your wishes? Are you sure? Are you mentally stable to make this decision? And then that coping mechanism of, this is the decision that's been made, are you okay with that?
Are you suggesting that we should have some type of test to see if they are mentally stable enough to make that decision for themselves?
There'll be restrictions. There's always needs to be restrictions and safeguards. Always have to be.
I think with, and I'm perfectly fine with either physician-assisted suicide or voluntary euthanasia. But in that aspect, I think it's, one of those things, okay, if I'm diagnosed with cancer, I'm going to see a mental health counselor,
Sorry, I didn't mean to talk so much. I was just gonna say, although I don't agree with the family having all of the say, only because it is you and you're suffering, but I do agree that they should have some sort of knowledge on it, only because my mom had a cousin who had cancer for so long, and her mom never knew about it until she died. So I do believe that some sort of knowledge to the families.
Another example, just that's current that everybody is aware of, instead of going back, Deadpool.
Yeah.
Okay? He made the decision, this person is telling him, I can cure your cancer. Well, his girlfriend wanted him to go through all the chemo treatment and to have surgery and do all this, and we're going to be fine. But his doctors are telling him, you're going to die. So he made the decision without informing his girlfriend and whatnot to go have this treatment done because someone told him that he's going to live, even though his girlfriend is telling him, we're going to go through the treatment.
Yeah, there's no easy solution. So let's do the last two. The consequentialist argument. This is the strongest argument if you believe in Kruzan and you believe in patient rights, people. What difference does it make? Active or letting die results in the same end, the death of the patient, exactly the end that the patient wants. We let the patient say, I don't want treatment, I want treatment, I want a treatment, now I don't want it. We let the patient say, I lack the capacity, but now I want the capacity to take my life. We're not happy with these decisions. Let's not be confused. The medical community isn't happy about passive voluntary euthanasia where you refuse treatment. They've had all their training to give you more days on the planet. Some of us decide we want quality rather than quantity. That doesn't mean they're happy about it, but the law regulates patient rights. So we let the patient have his right with passive, we let the patient have his right with PAS, we let the patient have his right with palliative care, and then suddenly, morally, we're just having an issue with putting someone to death instead of nature doing the deed for us. Or that we can extend your life and therefore extend your suffering, and if you don't agree with that, our moral code supersedes your moral code because we can't be involved in putting someone to death. That would be killing them. Even though the patient wants their rights respected, which brings us to the autonomy argument. The argument for the individual to make their own decisions as long as they're in their right mind. Now, right mind means you can have a living will and you're persistent vegetative state or reversible coma, but you stated if you ever fell into this, you want someone to put you out of your misery. If there's no hope of recovery, I don't want to be in this state anymore. And so even under this condition then in a living will, if the court would ever agree to voluntary active euthanasia, you could have a clause in there that said under these conditions, if they're part of the safeguards to safeguard people from just wanting to do it out of depression, say, or people who weren't mentally capable, if that's what you want, the patient has rights. It's the same end, it's just less suffering as opposed to longer time suffering. It's what the patient wants, and that's called the consequentialist argument, and it's based on the argument from autonomy. And that's what the whole libertarian argument is based on. People have rights to make their own decisions as long as what you decide doesn't directly harm somebody else. Now, there's a lot of indirect harm we can have, but it's direct harm is at the center of the libertarian argument. I'm not punching you in the nose. I'm living my own life. So what's your problem? Well, we have moral problems. We have sanctity of life problems. We introduce all different kinds of moral objections. And that's part of how we learn to live together, because we're never going to be in complete agreement. That being said, how many of you think Rachel has a decent argument for voluntary active euthanasia? If you don't, it's okay. If you don't, it's okay.
I didn't hear the question.
Say again? Well, how many of you think he's got the more decent argument for voluntary active euthanasia? Are there any flaws in this? Well, there are spontaneous remissions, miracles. I mean, if you could get your life back, would you want to live it? Or do you just say, oh, I'm done with it, I don't care if I can be healed or not? Embryonic stem cell research. When I went in for this, the first thing the doctor said is, too bad this isn't 5 years from now. He said, with stem cell research, we could probably make this go away. Well, it's 22 years from then, and they still haven't figured it out. Now, when we get to embryonic stem cell research, I'll explain why they probably never will. Go ahead.
I know this is like the stupidest analogy ever, but like one of the arguments against Rachel's would probably be like, if you were like blindfolded and you had to race to a certain point, and you knew you could go a little longer, but you decided to quit there, and you were just like
Right at the line.
Yeah, right at the line, and then you
Sure.
said, why didn't I just,
Sure.
keep running?
Sure. You could make the argument. Some people in your essays, now again, I don't know who, if it's anyone, have made the argument that, life has a moral value that can never be violated. It's too valuable. I mean, we're the only ones we know in the universe right now. We are unique in our being. Completely unique from every other living thing that we know of in the universe. And so that gives strength to the moral value of a human life. It goes back to Kantian respect for persons. And when you let someone take their own life, whether it's suicide or voluntary active euthanasia or even passive euthanasia, they say you're messing with the dignity of a human life. Well, you can get into that, you can buy into it, you can disagree with it.
I was going to say, if there's a moral absolute, then that works. If there is no God and no moral absolute, it's just organized chaos. So what difference does it make?
Oh, that's another part of the argument, absolutely. You ought to read the essays and try and give them a non-personal or prejudicial response to what they say. I mean, we all have an opinion. I ought to let you grade each other's essays one semester and see what you say to people who have a completely different point of view. If you can accept their point of view and see the validity of it. All arguments can be reasoned reasonably. Doesn't mean we agree with them. I don't agree with all of them. But last one, go
I
ahead.
just want to understand, let's say hypothetically, a patient has said, no, DNR, okay. They go into kidney failure. Kidney failure leads to a coma. So they can no longer at that point make a decision, but they've set these things in place. Where would that fall as far as what we're talking about?
Same place. That's a great question. Same place as passive euthanasia.
Okay.
Once you've declared your will, if we validate the will, then the will speaks beyond your capacity to speak. That's the importance of them, people.
So that would be voluntary, and that's currently legal.
No, that's not legal. It would be voluntary passive, not
Right.
not voluntary active. I mean, I've had conversations with someone I'm not going to tell you about. You might want to turn that off for me about